and then we'll get going. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of the holiday schedule, no less. We're all, hours away from December, so life gets even crazier for a lot of folks this time of year. So thank you for taking time out of that crazy life to join us tonight at our latest NOP event. Joining us are Brittany Rogers, Ralph Jenkins, and Zwart, three of my favorite poets, and I kind of can't believe that we actually have them all in one reading together. I won't bore you with the behind the scenes, but it took us a while to get this nailed down because we're busy, man. It's mostly me, and that I'm busy. For the folks that have been in the room, heard me opining about parenthood for a minute, and that kind of delays literally everything in life. If you know that, parenting life, you know how that goes. I am Mitch Nobis. I am your host. For those of you who are first timers, a 10-second intro. NOP started as a joke between Jared Beloff and me for several years. Again, parenting life, teacher life, K-12 teacher life. I can't get to AWP, so I would post dumb jokes about being not at AWP, and that's how NOP was born. Jared is way smarter than me. He came along and said, well, let's make NOP a real thing. And so here we are. We've been doing roughly monthly, give or take monthly events online, and thank you for joining us tonight. Our format's always roughly the same. We do a chunk of readings by our guests and then open it up to Q&A and kind of crossed out conversation. So Brittany, Jane, and Ralph, feel free to think of questions for each other as well. You're kind of like part of each other's audience to boot, right? So feel free to chime in with questions. As the night goes on, we got the chat enabled, so feel free to comment as we're going. Feel free to drop questions in there. If you're like me, you kind of got to write them down before you forget them, right? And we are going to go alphabetical by first name. I decided 3.5 minutes ago, because that's how well organized I am, which means Brittany is going to lead us off. I'll let you all introduce yourself, but I know we got a Michigan thing going today, so I did grab a Detroit hoodie before we got started here. So what up, though, to our Detroit natives in the room. Brittany, I'm going to toss the mic over to you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully you all can hear me. I also have children in my house, so fingers crossed that it stays quiet. I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I'm an educator. I teach 12th graders, which most days I love, and some days I'm like, why did I do this? And yeah, I think those are the major basics about me. And I'm a Detroit girl. So this is a very Detroit girl set that I'm gonna do for you. Thank you for being here and listening. Blackout, August 2003, Detroit. It was one of the biggest power outages that the US ever saw. At first, people were worried it was an act of terrorism, but when the blackout was confirmed as merely a power outage, the mood shifted. The grills turn up. Somebody's speakers serenade all our porches, and we jam, smoke-soaked and lawless, all open hormones in this powerless field. What is it about the end of the world makes you think you're owed an explanation? From God, from your mama, from the boy who ghosted months ago when the air became more steam than breeze, his number still memorized and half dialed each evening. You would chase him down, make him answer to you while the streetlights are silent, but this block, this city, don't know how to tell us apart in the daylight, done swallowed whole bodies before this night, ripe for disappearing. First, the man of the house next door swept clean off his mama's porch. Maria, a dandelion blown away from the passenger seat of her new man's custom cutlass. My city give a fuck about the proper order of things. She love a malfunction. All them downed wires, mirrors broken in the street. Our minivan set on stolen bricks by thieves kind enough to leave the metal skeleton stripped in the driveway. This block hormone swole, smelling herself. There is no law. Sometimes in May, it snows. Oh, thank you. All the reasons I've said yes. A dare, a bet, no money on the line. Never for money, though I should have. Not for what I would call money, but certainly for knowing I would be good enough to get a bill paid, daycare covered, the fridge filled. Because I was mad at the other one. Because didn't answer the phone. Because when I get anxious, all my nerves coil tornado tight. See how fast they spin. We don't get tornadoes in Detroit, at least not yet. In school, we practice the drill twice a year. Practice, so much practice. I wasn't sure that I would ever make it to you. Okay, I'm gonna read a new poem for you. I'm reading 2 new poems today, so. And it's after and Mick Powell. It's called Rock the Boat, is a song about strapping. Rock the Boat is a song about strapping, according to my pastor, who I, like a fool, mistook for the God I already knew by name. Of course, strapping was too vulgar for her holy mouth, though she called Aaliyah everything but her name. Aaliyah calls to me, rock the boat, work the middle. Obedient, my waist rose with a want so large I could not name it. How many ways can I tell on myself? I can admit now that then I did not want to wear the names I'd heard flung from the pulpit. For my auntie's gossip, even here in my own home, I am named funny for watching a woman dancing with women. Their bodies whisper close, not a man in sight. There is a name for the type of lie I told with my mouth closed, for what I pretend to not know as clearly as I know my own name. I'm going to read a poem about my granny because I'm missing her real bad today. It's called On Our Third Anniversary. On our third anniversary, Granny promises again to buy us a wedding present, a grill to host the family on summer holidays. In this family, it's the women who grill. I could have learned by now had I paid attention when she took me to the ballparks, Battle Creek on weekends, Jane Field most afternoons. The fellas swarmed her food stand like bees, willing to pay the premium for chops or Polish sausage, hot dogs if their wallet was switched thin that week. My granny tongs Midas touched, meat smoked tender as a goodnight kiss. I gathered with the girls learning to cry baby in the parking lot, flat hips ironed against sticky asphalt, thrusting, popping the ass that I did not yet have. I missed the important steps, lighting the charcoal, brining the ribs, tricks to keep the kerosene's lick off the finished meal. Now holidays come and neither of us can cook her meat the way she likes. She would offer to teach me again, hard-headed as I am, but dementia won't let her fix her tongue to tell me how. Okay, so I'm gonna read my last couple poems are, oh wait, I read too fast. I can talk a little bit in between then. Good. Um, so my last few poems are about the ice cam in Detroit. If you've heard me read, you've likely heard me talk about it. The ice cam is my favorite thing in the world most days. It is, if you go to the Pistons games, instead of like a kiss cam, for those who are unfamiliar, Detroit has what we call an ice cam, where it looks at you and everybody holds up their jewelry. And it's like my favorite thing because as recently as like a few years ago, I don't think I realized how much of a bad rap like adornment and extravagance get. And I don't think that I realized it because I'm a Detroit girl and we're all about extravagance and adornment. So everybody that I know is flashy in some way. Like everybody, like all my aunties are like mink fur down, Coach purse everywhere. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we have a vibe. And I started traveling for grad school. And that's when I realized I was like, oh, wait, everybody doesn't do this. And they were like, girl, no. And so that's something that I find both fascinating and and interesting in a lot of ways, mostly because I'm very curious about how we as a society decide who gets to own things, who gets to be flashy, who gets to be extravagant. And the spoiler alert is that poor people are not supposed to, and Black people are not supposed to, and Detroit is both. So I love the rebellion of being flashy anyway. It's something about it that just makes my little heart smile. So the next series of poems is dedicated to the ice cam. This one is also a new poem. Ice Cam, Little Caesars Arena, February 2023. Now that grief lays her hand on my cheek, curves into my chest, lover, child, a ghost bearing the face of my grandmother. Now that we are close enough to greet by first name, I look out at the sea of jewelry and see how a game can be a memorial, how the body becomes an altar, rows and rows of gold pendants, thick as fists, gripping portraits of beloveds. This grief, heavy, wrapped around our throats. Oh, how it makes us casket sharp, so flashy the camera can't bear to look away. This one has an epigraph. It was the one that kind of kicked off the Ice Cam series because I started seeing people on Twitter talking about it, and their commentary was hilarious to me. I was like, oh wow, people really think this. This is really funny. And so the epigraph to this poem was taken from one of those like Twitter searches. And it says, that Pistons ice cam is some of the wildest shit I've ever seen. Do they not rob niggas in Detroit? I would cover my face and run if there was ever an ice cam in redacted Twitter user. Ice Cam, Little Caesars Arena, January 2022. When the ice cam turns wide-eyed toward our section, we do what we must. Curl a thumb under the Cuban link and lift it high as praise. No one is untouchable, not even you, pleading for us to quiet our jewels cackling throughout the stadium. Strip bare our pinkies, wrists, chests, for whose gaze? Those thirsty for our throats and what they take to be wealth. Your problem is our nerve, thick as tobacco smoke. You wish we'd get rid of it. We know. The gold is just a cover. And this is my last one. It takes its title from a Cash Doll song, which is titled Doing Too Much, which is also one of my favorite songs. And also one of my favorite people. Again, something about the audacity makes my heart it warms my heart. Doing Too Much, Ice Cam, Little Caesars Arena, January 2022. Cash Doll so Detroit, she throws herself a Pistons-themed baby shower, makes a museum of balloons and basketballs and gold, and her fans call her gaudy, tacky. Twitter says a Detroit nigga is just an Alabama nigga with buffs. Rappers gifted our governor a pair, gratitude for the years she dared keep our city from dying. Outsiders didn't call her what they call us for wearing sunglasses in a city where we are the only light. They say ghetto and mean migration. They say Detroit stand up and we raise our wrists like shot glasses. Toast to us and our colored minks and our Cartiers, necks swaddled in brick-thick chains. It ain't a flex if he ain't wearing at least two and a Jesus piece, if his watch ain't thick as firewood. What's love if your face isn't encased in a necklace long as spite? There are things worse than extravagance, and they all know our names. Thank you.
Yeah, Brittany. If you all are not Detroit centric, I'm not sure you know exactly how Detroit heavy that set of poems was. I mean, Pistons, Cash Doll, that was great. That was great. Like I'm outside Detroit. I'm a suburb, to be very clear to folks who don't know Michigan. And I as a suburbanite, I guess at least one of the closer suburbs, like it's a whole thing in the Detroit area. Like folks from West Bloomfield will say they're from Detroit, and like West Bloomfield is not Detroit. And I like where I live, everybody says like, yeah, I'm from Detroit. Like we're not Hoss. We're from Farmington. Like it's different, you know. And those poems are very Detroit. Like I love the ice camp. I love the Pistons. We're gonna win again. We're gonna win. I want to be very clear about that. It's gonna happen. Um, sorry, I'm not supposed to give commentary. I just had to chime in. Like Detroit does not get enough love on the national scene, and I love how Detroit centric your work is. So I had to talk.
Thank you. No, I was gonna say being a Detroit sports fan is stressful in a lot of ways, but that's okay. I have faith in us. Okay, I believe in us.
I fully believe the Lions are gonna like make this Super Bowl and lose by 70 or something. Like they're gonna punk us some way or another. Like it's a whole thing to be a Detroit sports fan. Like we're like the Pistons, like we're used to this, right? We're used to this. Like we got this. We're fine. All right, thanks. Sorry, everybody. Didn't mean to get all basketball there. Brittany, thank you very much. Moving on, and I forgot like when I welcomed us all into this show at the top of the episode, I failed to mention that there are cool things I love about tonight's lineup. One is that it's all Michigan connected. We're just going to bounce from one part of Michigan to another to a Michigan expat, folks who, you know, are deeply connected to Michigan, which is something near and dear to my heart. And that kind of just happened. Like the episode didn't set out to be like the all Michigan, it just kind of did, and that makes me really happy. And then also that these are all poets who don't have a full length book out yet, which is another thing I love to highlight because the literary world so often puts a spotlight on the new book. So I really love folks who like A, don't have a book, or B, their book is old and so they're not in the spotlight anymore. So like thank you all for reading for us tonight. And I hope everybody gives you your flowers because you're amazing poets. And well, Brittany has a book deal recently announced, right? So congrats to Brittany. We were definitely looking forward to that. All right, let's go across this state. Well, I'll circle back on the book stuff when we get to the questions. Let's go across the state to the west side. Jane Zwart, you are up next. Again, I'll let you introduce yourself and then take it from there. Thanks for joining us, Jane.
All right. Thank you all. And Brittany, I'm so excited for your book and eager to hear more about it. Whenever I do something like this, I feel a little bit out of my depth. So I decided to start with a poem called Amateur Hour, because that feels like my part of the hour. So I'll start with that. Amateur Hour. To outgrow, or perhaps to outlast, fumbling. To age into a plum, or out of choir. I thought there would be some muscle memory for being. I thought, 1 year, I will awake and feel sure. At letting on that birthday has come, I am at last a pro. I laugh like someone unafraid of mockery. I speak like a woman decided. But what I am waiting for now is not assurance. Now I am holding out for the hour between fear and command. I am waiting to awake unable to distinguish between acts of daring and love. The second poem I have, thank you, is coming out soon in Image magazine, and they have had it for a long time because it's a Christmas poem. So I will, read this poem and say thank you to Image. It's called Heaven Afar. God bless the man whose brow greases the glass when he naps or despairs. For us, he turns off the tube lights. For us, someone hums up and down a carol's first style and the room dims. Bucket roses, carousel racks, fifths of mint mouthwash costing a mint. Him. But inside his booth, a lace of tiny bulbs taped to the pane blitzes, enough to see him lean, listening. So we sing for him. This man standing under a valance of rose gold tongues, scratch cards lolling from spools. We sing, backlit by a cooler, a tropical aquarium dealt into bottles of Gatorade, one orange tetra, a zigzag of lightning funneled into each dose. I will not swear that no one was tipsy, that none of us paid the clerk before or after to slide cigarettes across the metal gully in the sill by his post. And I will not say that Silent Night sings the same in an Amico, its lights doused by the third shift's drudge, as in a candlelight church. In gas stations, you can hear the serenade inside the hymn. You can hear God's lullaby. Thanks. This next one is about a former cat of ours, and the cat was named Augie. I got the idea for this poem actually from C.D. Finley through just a Twitter comment. So that is actually, a hotbed of good poetic things, or at least it used to be. Hope it will remain so. So the poem is called Augie. When we learned it was a son, that swimmer grinding his heels against my uterine wall, perfecting flip turns in a kiddie pool, I, who loved our cat, who insisted we keep him even when a blacklight revealed the pollock he had pissed in the basement, who paid a bundle to untangle his bowel, I, who never left town without penning a treatise on his care, and could see a smear of Tom in the street and weep for the resemblance only. When we learned it was a son, I asked if one could name her boy for a cat. No, my husband said. So I asked if one could name her boy for a dead cat. Of course it was a joke. This betrayal, so wicked and quick that I cried. It was also how I turned into a mother. This poem is for a woman I know named Carol. And maybe some of you have someone like this too, that was sort of an adult that your parents or one of your parents was friends with, that just seemed sort of magical in a way that most adults don't when you're a kid. So this poem is for her. For Carol, slicing carrots. From your hand, I trusted saffron. I trusted pink mustard brushed on fried eggs. True, I thought, and now I am eating a spoonbill's young. I thought hummingbirds must have laid the ovals of semi-precious heaviness you wore on both your wrists. So brave, my grandma said, when she misread my lips, then refused to believe that you had not become a parachutist, but a parish nurse, after all. Maybe it was your impractical scarves, mantillas, pashminas, the odd sarong. Maybe the grace that never dragged one's fringe through a gravy. Or maybe our knowing that if you had, it would muster the beads of grease into a brooch against the broth skin, more beautiful than the fronds baristas trace in foamed milk. Your laugh is not music, but it cores the air like a note. Your art is not white magic, but in another century, women would have blamed you for what you could heal. They would have watched you turn thin medallions of carrot into sun catchers. And bewitched, they would have called you bewitched for what you held up to the light. This is my new one of the evening, and it's called 2 Points Define a Line, which I think is mathematically sound. The conspiracy theorists have this much right. There are strings. I don't mean to indulge their yarns, tabloids plotting Elvis's posthumous cameos, paranoid collages with dead presidents at center, just the yarn itself. I mean just that it's twine all the way down, that underfoot there are untold filaments, tangled, slack, and that there are not 7 degrees of separation, that 2 points define a line. Think of the rope waiting for the youths who will take sides and straighten it between them, hand over hand, until they are close enough to embrace. Think of the string taut between tin can handsets. You and I, there is a ribbon between us. I will reel the looseness from it, if you will. Think of the dash some couples stretch between their 2 surnames. All right. I got one more for you. I think that's within my time still. This one comes from a story that Reese Eisman Troll told. She is the editor at Cave Wall, and told it about her daughter when her daughter was young. So one of her daughters was 3 and the other was an infant. The infant was named Cordelia, and I think that's enough backstory to make the end of the poem make sense. This world is made for joy. No one is denying that of this world, we have made a million joyless things. Landfills, bump stocks, cast. In row, plastic gristle. In children, lead. In case, the suicide note. How is it, then, that we tarry on this side of the ultimatum, unready to depart this cruel world made for joy? Well, there's this. Sometimes when we say, in case, what we mean is that we are bluffing on the strength of the bees who stuff their leg warmers with gold dust. And sometimes when we say hope, we mean small fry, herring just hatched, an effervescing pond. My claim on joy is this. Once, a pediatrician asked my son if it was his middle name. So when I say this world, I mean wonders, and I mean signs taken for wonders, all of it. I mean the grocer who wagged a wet pom-pom of cilantro at us like it was hyssop. You can't tell me that water wasn't holy, as the water is holy when a man not unused to rain gets caught biking home, not just in rain, but in more than a downpour, when his mild epithets turn to whooping on his tongue. Even later, he will not be able to tell it without laughter, without incredulity. He will not say cloudburst or torrent. He will say, the heavens opened. Sometimes they do. Sometimes a child at 3, writes a note in unproven runes and tapes it to the sling where her infant sister bucks. When I say hope, I mean that when their mother asks, the toddler reads the runes. Cordelia, this world is made for joy. Thank you.
I always whenever I host a thing, I always kind of feel bad that like we're all muted and you can't hear the responses. So I kind of feel like you need to know that like I'm kind of constantly muttering "damn" when you're like, I'm like, damn, damn. Maybe not, family friendly, I guess, but like that was your powerful endings, especially Jane. Like your poetry always amazes me, and I'm jealous of how prolific you are too. Like I'm behind on reading you. Like you keep posting new pieces. I gotta catch up on the Jane Ovra. Is that how you say that word? Yeah, right.
Thank you. I'll prize the dams.
Yes. Like Blue Ribbon. Mitch, you got a Mitch Dam. All right. Thank you, Jane. That was amazing. And the chat is like full of people awing at your imagery, especially. Let's see here. Sure that everything is still working. Ralph, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I am good. Another cool thing about tonight that I didn't think about until about 5 minutes ago. Not only are these folks all Michigan connected, either current or former residents, they also have all been on my other show, the Wednesday night sessions thing I do out of Farmington's arts organization. So how cool. I got you. Again, another cool reason I got all three of you in one room together. So thank you for doing that. I'm not sure I've ever had like a reading where I already knew everybody's have heard everybody read before. I was gonna say knew everybody's work. I usually know the work of the folks I'm hosting, but I've heard you all read before too, which is this is kind of cool. I don't usually get like a sophomore effort of audience ship, as you will. So, Ralph, that's a very long-winded and stupid intro to your awesome work. My bad. Again, I'll let you introduce yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Ralph Jenkins.
Thanks again, man. Thank you for having me. What's going on, everybody? Like you said, my name is Raphael Jenkins. My mother would love you to use my full name, Raphael Jenkins. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, like all the best people I know are. And yeah, I live in Kentucky now. I'm a chef by day, and I am moonlighting as a poet writer person in my in my off times. So yeah, just glad to be here and read. I'm going to set a timer because keep myself on pace because I don't pay attention to how slow I talk. I will ramble as I am right now. Sorry. Okay, so as Brittany said, it's going to be another good Detroit set for a little bit here, just because I want to get a little, back home feeling in my vibe. So here we go. This first poem is called "What Up Though," but you have to say it like "What up though," of course. What up though? Mama would mock me after phone calls with the homies, say she can't believe how grown her baby sound, and you ain't too man to go pluck a switch from the backyard, which was at best a euphemism, as most the trees here got took out by Dutch elm disease in the 70s, which she knows but neglects to consider when making a point of putting me in my place. And I miss these threats terribly now that I live 1.5 tanks of gas away from the only home I know to use that word for. And I am thinking about how a long stretch gone almost always amounts to a chorus of loves greeting you upon your return in a dialect that is as wide in the mouth as the cities of their birthing, and how for me and my ilk, the harmony is a wall of what up those painted every color of Fago stained tongue. And I see how this slang at that time for my mother felt like a harbinger of some doom she wanted no ties to. And I suppose I am truly saying I forgive her attempts at washing the hood from my maw, using idioms as soap to cleanse my colloquialisms away, i.e. hay is for horses and shit like like that. And I say attempts because it ain't really work. And I am fine with this outcome, as home ain't meant to be no kind of finishing school. Home is a one-armed hug extending itself into a full grip, and laughs echoing corners you used to haunt daily, where you can still see the chalk outlines of the latest gone too soons to exit the gutter. And what a double-edged sword to be a guest in the war zone of your childhood, but grown now and with shit to lose and enough sense to know when to say the reunion is over, but no will to risk pulling the plug and kill the vibe, though it's actually a circumvention of misery sure to come. And what great fortune, a surprise summer rain doing the work, its barrage sending us scurrying like boys again back into whatever shelter might keep us safe and dry. And so this too must also be a home of some sort, huddling under the thin grace of a liquor store awning, with breath rushing in and out and in and out faster than these blunt riddled lungs can catch it, while July's tears stream down faces now scruff with worry, and beards our infants tangle their fingers within. So that's that one. This next one is, I don't remember where I first heard it. It was like a tweet or something, but Brittany mentioned it, something similar in one of her poems. So I'll kind of get right into it because we already kind of been there. All right. Some say Detroit niggas is really just country niggas with fur coats on, and they are not wrong. All hail them that smuggled red clay in back pockets and swamp mud under tongue, them that built the sound and shape of the city by the straits, using bricks of factory smoke and jazz. And shout outs to the driven snow they met, driving in droves away from all that sought to drive them out. The teeth, the hands, oh, those hands that wrote the crows and sicked the hounds and held the hoses and snatched the babies and burned the churches and swung the batons and looped the nooses and fondled the wives and tarred the husbands and snapped the photos and who could blame my people for believing the fable of an America whose hands are outstretched with the gift of bread in one palm and a golden key in the other? Alas, at least they learned how to dress for winter, the sole promise that couldn't be broken. Okay, so this next piece, back in, I think it was February, Patricia Smith was the guest editor for the Poem a Day, and she had she curated a series of love sonnets, so just going through the experiment of love sonnets, and I believe they were Black love sonnets, but that, whatever, love sonnets. And so that, it got my gears turning about like what the possibility of that thing could be. And I'm not a formalist at all, but I do like what form does for poems. And so I wanted to try to write a metered Shakespearean sonnet in that style and sort of see what would come out of me when I did that. So here's one of the poems in the series of that love poem thought. Love poem number 13. If only you knew how badly I want to love you, America. The flowers I'd give you were all the bees not dying. I would sing my allegiance till hoarse were my throat not bloodied from throwing my voice at your walls. I'd dig my toes in your soil were it not for my niggas' bones you broke and buried. I love you like legs love a limp, like lovers love a layer of latex between them. Sometimes I buy maps and set them on fire to see your face light up. I want to not wish you gone. I want to write a poem that renders you a light I can hold in my heart, but you're a bullet. I want to love you, but you showed up to my sister's funeral with bloody palms, told my mama to hush her fuss as you fanned your meat sweats, a bit of her daughter still caught between your molars. America, I can't give you love. It's all buried next to my homie's sweet rot. I cried rose petals over her open casket till it filled, then vowed to see her killer dead. Ain't you so proud I have learned to love as you do? How to hunt till what you seek is either yours or ash. I've mastered your magic trick, abracadabra, and I'm about ready to show off how skilled I am with my hands. So that was a love poem. This other one's kind of fell in that same series of poems about love and how I kind of might approach that. This one is called My City Taught Me Love. Round my way, we learn to clench a fist before we are given a name. Pardon my hyperbole. I mean to say I've been carrying a knife in my pocket since I jumped off the porch, been watching for what lurks in shadowed alleyways, prepared to make it home alive by any means. My city is a mouth full of mouths lined with rotting teeth. My city is hungry but can't chew, so it swallows you whole. My city is where I first tasted the tender of another's lips, where I learned how to gnaw smoked meat from bone. First bone I broke happened in the hood, riding a huffy down a hill that could have claimed my neck. So I guess I've been willing to die on my share of small mountains. And I think the way in which I hold dear what has tried to end me is the best example of how I am most familiar with what we call love. Throwing caution to the wind for the chance to feel something akin to flying, arms stretched out as the periphery blurs into a paint-smudged spring nirvana until you crash and learn a new pain that haunts you even after the break mends. So this next poem here is a persona poem. Like I said, I kind of like to do things in form every now and then. So I wanted to put persona and pantoum together to sort of keep myself from rambling. So the title kind of gives you all the context of the poem, and here we go. A vigilante confesses to the murder of an industry. James Brown died on Christmas morning. I heard his legendary scream was hidden in the folds of his favorite satin cape and laid to rest with him in his diamond crypt. As he became dust, which doesn't seem right to say about a timeless man, some motherfucker stole a bit of his sweaty squall, hid the fragment in the folds of his dirty cotton blend, yearning to take the rest with him as he skirted into the maw of night. Ain't no need to wonder why the sanctity of a timeless man's sweaty squall will be stolen by some motherfucker who ain't know or care how hard James labored to contain all that song. Ain't no need to wonder why the thief figured he'd escape unscathed into the night. He the same one who stole Bessie Smith's moan and Little Richard's blueprints. He ain't know or care one mouth ain't built to contain all that song. All he knew was his hunger. He knew taking is easier than tilling soil and growing a moan in his own voice. He is the architect of nothing, great at paying homage, less so at paying back pockets bled dry by his hunger, his need to be known. He knew toiling in the soil to be beneath him, preferred to dirty his hands with a different grime, one great for a body while flowing in the veins, less so when bled out and used to paint the charts. How much blood is on those billboards? How many bodies buried beneath them? How many red hands have been washed clean of horror before anyone could see? Do you understand? Can you hear me over the hook in your favorite chart topper and the blood rushing in your ears? He brought this upon himself. If you cared, I would tell you of every sink he sullied, cleaning away the horror of guilt before anyone could see. Don't you hear me? I'm trying to tell you why I did it, but all you seek is an admission. Yes, it was me. It was me who took matters into my own hands, but he brought this upon himself. All I did was show him the taste of his own poison, the bite of a blade he forged and sharpened. I'm trying to tell you why I did it, but all you seek is his body. He's buried under a pile of vinyl records, near the river that witnessed Sam Cooke's birth. Couldn't stomach his own poison. Skin resisted like paper when met with his blade. I returned the pilfered holler to James's dusty diamond crypt. It seemed the right choice. Do you get it now? I wasn't there to save Sam or his sound, but I was listening when James Brown died on Christmas morning. I heard his legend screaming for help. And if I have time, yes, I can read. This one's just short. I'll skip the next one. This one is called Golds. I recently realized I have an affinity for gold teeth that I never knew that I would have when I got older. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the being in the South thing, but it's sort of in the same line of thought as Brittany was speaking about earlier about the ideas of an adornment and who gets to shine when they want to and what that shine means and who gets to look at it and observe it and be into it. And I don't know. I was just thinking about that, so I wrote a little thing about that in that way. So this one is called Golds, Goldz, Golds. Praise the sun-bright grins of my gaudy skin folk, and the mouths unwilling to keep all that shine hidden behind plump lips. Look how the light suns the sun, and don't bother saying sorry. We shimmer, shameless. O sanctuary of black gums and bull's foul tongue, holy be your slow rot and smoke stains, haloed in soft metal. Each tooth-crowned king of some spit-slick nation, monarchy of molars, empire of incisors, bone blades cloaked in hallelujah and light, bless your gilded bite. A pain I yearn to know. Yes, I deserve to be touched like this, coaxed into wailing by a noble clad grin, gnawed clean, at last had by a holiness worth falling to one's knees for. Thanks, y'all.
Dang, Ralph. Dang, all of you. I love all three of yours work so much. I don't even like. I'm kind of out of words. I don't even know what to say. Like I'm filled to the brim. I'm overflowing. I'm thrilled to have got to hear all three of you in one night. Someday in some kind of perfect world, this like happens in a bar someplace or something. Like that was fantastic. Thank you. We don't have a whole lot of time, so let's do some Q&A. Audience, drop questions in the chat if you have any. I think it was Kate or Katie asked one that's very similar to what one of the questions that was on my mind. So Katie, I'm gonna kind of take yours and morph it in and make it a yes and. Katie Schmidt asked, Ralph, if your first poem is published anywhere, I'd love to reread it. And I want to kind of tweak that. I'm going to give you a chance to answer, but I also want to tweak that to all of you. Like, this is kind of one reason I want all three of you to have books out so bad, because like I want to reread these and chew on them and then reread them again, and again. Like I feel like all three of you have work that really lends itself to that kind of rumination of the read and the reread. So kind of a shout out if there's any editors in the audience or any folks who know editors, like send them these guys' way. Ralph, so the direct question though, back to you, the first poem, which is I think is the Guest in the War Zone of your childhood one, I believe was the first one you read.
Yeah, so that poem that is actually published. That was published in Frontier 2021, something like that, like 2 years ago. But yes, it is published. That is the only one that's out in the world. The rest of the poems are, this is the first time people are hearing them.
I didn't think none of the others sounded familiar to me, so I'm glad you said that. So, speaking of new shit, you dropped a lot of new shit tonight. I appreciate that. All right. Oh, Kevin pointing, yeah, there's a lot of windows open right now if you want to submit manuscripts. If you have a mint, Brittany's gonna have to sell her grill for sending out all the manuscripts. You gotta get that on the ice cam, by the way. All right. One thing I am again, I'm kind of like fanboying over all three of yours work right now. I'm kind of intrigued with each of you all about like your process a little bit, because you kind of each have a unique voice. And how to say that? Well, let me just ask a really basic version of this question. Like, how quick do you write? I think I've asked all three of you variations on this before in the other show, but like, how how many like times do you generally like revise a piece? Like all three of you have like these super tight images. I'm crazy jealous because like I feel like my stuff isn't that tight. Like, how do you get your work to be that tight and cohesive? I don't know. Talk to us about talk about yourselves. You three, what's your process? Oh, we're being quiet.
I just want to add to the question, if I could, before giving any part of an answer. So partly listening to you both read, it's almost impossible for me to imagine that you don't try out the sounds out loud as you write. Do you find yourselves doing that, sort of talking along with yourself? Is there a kind of silence or a kind of background noise that helps you to kind of write and find all of those sounds in the way that they fit together and work together?
I can definitely say for myself, I am reciting the poem as I'm writing it. So if there's anybody around me, it's probably very annoying because you're hearing the same thing over and over and over again. But for the life of me writing and revising something, I have to hear it myself. Um, I always think if I can't say it out loud, it probably is. It feels clunky or something like that. So I'm very concerned with the cadence and like the music in my writing, just because I know I can say too much. I have a habit of overwriting and putting in explainers that don't need to be there. So if I'm paying attention to rhythm, or at least trying to, I'll probably hear when I'm doing too much a little bit. And so yeah, I'm constantly talking to myself as I'm writing, always. And to answer what you said, Mitch's question was how long. It varies. This first poem, the first one I wrote took me, I read, excuse me, took me like 2 years to work on. But then the one after that, I wrote it in like 2 days. So it varies.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I had one like or it's earlier this month. I had one I wrote in like 3 days, and that never happens for me. Like it was kind of a weird feeling. Brittany, how about you?
I'm a really slow writer. Um, yes, come on, you can come say hi. Um, my husband went to the bathroom and my son said, "Let me take my chance." Say hi.
So, buddy.
He's not gonna really say hi. That's his favorite thing to do. He just likes to be waved at. So I'm a pretty slow writer. I think for a long, long, long time before I start writing things. So I may have a concept that I think on for like years, and then one day I sit down and I'm like, great, here's the poem. But the thought process took the longest. And then I love you too. Thank you. And then I edit a lot as I write. I definitely, to Jane's point, think I read out loud as I edit. And I think editing is probably where I feel most comfortable. Like that's my stronger suit. And it doesn't take me nearly as long as like the initial writing does. 16 goats. I'm muting now.
Give him the mic. That's a fascinating answer. I love that. Thank you for telling us that. I feel like I'm kind of the opposite sometimes. That's really cool. Real quick before we do run out of time, I think I saw, did Deanna have a hand up? I'm not adept at looking at the emoji things. Deanna, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, or was that like a hand clap thing?
That was a wave. That was a wave for the little one.
Ah, I love it. Love it. Waves for the babies. All right. Audience, any other questions? I don't want to dominate all the Q&A. Any questions out there?
I wanted to hear Jane talk about her process.
Oh yeah, we didn't get Jane's answer, did we?
Yeah, I kind of cheated.
Question, not the answer.
Yeah, I think there are similar things to what both of you were saying. I think like Ralph, there are certain poems that they just sort of come together really quickly, and there are others that just you can tell that something's there, but it takes a long time. For me, it helps a lot to just put things away long enough that I can kind of come back as a reader instead of someone who is invested in the creative process, because then I can begin to see things that I can't see when I'm in the midst of it. Yeah, and so I feel like one of the things that is really helpful to me, just in terms of finding my way, I have this giant folder called Poem Crumbs. And just, every once in a while there is an image, right? Or a sentence that someone says, or a tweet, or whatever, that I don't know what poem it fits into, or even if I'm going to be the one to write it eventually. But I know there's something there, right? So I think for me, having that to look back at every once in a while, and sometimes I'll remember something's there and I'm like, oh, that's the thing. And sometimes I'll just page through it when I'm feeling bored with other things, and I'll find something that way.
Love that idea. And I love that the way you said, like, you might not be the one who writes it. I forget how you just phrased it, but like that, I feel like for every writer, like we reach a point where we finally get kind of healthy with it, where we realize that we may never be the one to grasp the idea. It may have been an idea that just flew by in the ether and we saw it. And part of like the professional skill of being a writer is recognizing the good idea. But then life happens, and your kid jumps in your lap and you don't have a pen handy. And yeah, I got a file full of those. I want to ask a question, one more question at least here, real quick. I know we're going to run out of time. But again, all three of you, I feel like half the time I feel like I ask questions because like I recognize faults in myself, and I'm jealous that you all are really good at stuff. I feel like you all have kind of consistent voices. I feel like sometimes in my own work I jump around too much, and that's a preamble to readings. How do you prep for a reading like tonight? Because like all three of you had such kind of like, it felt like tightly woven sets. I'm a music fan, so I tend to think of these things as like concert set lists, right? And I feel like all three of you had like killer set lists tonight, like a great lead-off song, and then like it kind of built on each other well, and like a great closing number. It's like, I don't know, how do you think about it? Like as you're preparing for a night like this, like how do you put together your reading? Jane, you went last time, so let's start off with Jane. We'll go reverse.
I think, part of it is pretty shallow. It's partly, I think, when I'm preparing for something like this, I find what I have liked lately. And maybe it's because something got picked up by a magazine and that makes me like it more. But yeah, I also think, I try and, when I'm doing something like this, I try and kind of vary lengths of different poems and levels of sort of brightness and darkness that are in the poems. And yeah, I like a couple that maybe have a little funny something in them, and a couple that maybe have a little shiv in them. And yeah, but I think I always look at the last line and first line of the ones that'll follow each other. And usually if it's a bad sort of progression, that's enough to kind of clue you into that.
Some funny and some shiv. I absolutely love that. It's such a great way of putting it.
I agree. That was pretty much what I did. There's going to be like maybe the poem that What Up Though was just one of my favorite poems that I've ever written. So I like to get to read it whenever I can. It just makes me feel good. I wrote it because I was homesick, so it makes me feel good to set the tone with that. And pretty much everything that came up after that is just sort of a reflection of what I've been writing about these past few months or so. Just what's been coming to me and kind of my own personal zeitgeist of stuff.
Yeah. Brittany.
For me, it's like a little bit of whatever mood I'm in. But largely like I try to think about whatever story I want to tell to that particular audience, and then think about like, okay, what poems give like an arc of that story.
Which back to my question, I feel like is all very much like making a band set list. It's like what
Yeah.
town am I in? Like, what are the songs I've been working on a lot? Like it's kind of the same idea, right? I love that. All right, I want to honor everybody's time, so we will wrap it up because we are past you. Yeah, or a mixtape, exactly. I was listening to Tribe Called Quest with my kids earlier, so like definitely like the flow of one song into another is definitely a huge part of it all, right? All right, audience, thank you all 1,000% for joining us tonight. Brittany, Jane, and Ralph, thank you 1,000,000% for joining us all tonight. You're all amazing. Another NOP event coming up here before too long, one that Jared's hosting. Keep an eye on the socials for details on that. You're all amazing. Thank you for making tonight fantastic and ending November on an incredible note. Peace out, everybody.
Thank you.